Yeah, this is a podcast of Nathan, Nat and Sean.
Let's go!
All right, guys, for the first time ever, we're going to hear from Luc Longley. He's doing a speaking tour, and you'll be able to catch him at the State Theatre Centre of WA. That's Heath Ledger Theatre, in fact.
Yep.
If you're looking for tickets, artsculturaltrust.wa.gov.au. Now, we've seen a lot when it comes to Luc. We know a lot about Luc's career, three-time NBA player, champion, should I say. And then, I guess, highlighted just recently, Nathan, for all of us, when Michael Jordan put out his last dance. We're wondering where the great West Australian was in a lot of that stuff.
We got glimpses of him.
Well, now we get to hear from him.
Too.
Hey, Luke. Hey, Luke, how are you?
That must have been a mad time for you, Luke.
Yeah, it was. It was really interesting, actually. It was an interesting sort of cocktail of emotions. Obviously, I was disappointed, and I certainly wasn't crossed. I understood. I sort of understand that what the sexy parts of that story were, and that's what Netflix is all about. But by the same token, I was a little bit disappointed. Probably, actually, that the Australian angle wasn't represented.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was interesting. But they actually did me a favour, because without leaving me out of the Netflix doc, I probably wouldn't have taken the time or had the interest to do the Australian story thing.
Yeah,
which
it was so
ended up
good.
being
Really
a really good thing for me. Yeah, so I was happy with that.
When you were over there right at the start, because I'm guessing there weren't too many international, like Australian celebrities flooded the market as what there is now.
Yep.
When you were doing interviews and stuff, Luke, did they have to put subtitles up for you? What was the deal? Could people understand you? Because they didn't have a frame of reference.
No, well, they did, because Crocodile Dundee had just come out. So it was all prawns on the barbie and that sort of thing. But Americans are pretty ethnocentric. I got funny questions in America. Things like, do you guys do Christmas? So, Americans, they've learned a bit since then. They know who we are now. We introduced ourselves, Paul Hogan introduced us in a lot of ways. But, when I went there, no one had a few people, but there hadn't been a lot of people even go to college in America as a pathway. And now we've got hundreds of kids a year, actually more girls than boys even, men than women, I should say. And it's a great resource, because it's a full ride sponsored education, and you get to play basketball every day, and it's just such a good lurk if you're into basketball and you're young and you feel like travelling.
I saw Andrew Vlahov's daughter's just headed over to play college over there.
Luke, you went to college, which you talked about before, but then you're the number one pick, and all of a sudden you're thrust into the limelight. Off to the Timberwolves was the first port of call. How was that? There was so much fanfare around you at that point in time.
Yeah, the fanfare didn't last long. I struggled when I first got to the NBA. I had a contract holdout, which meant I didn't join the team for a couple of months. And by the time I got there, my name was mud. They'd already started playing. And I had my sort of little college game that worked, which really didn't work in the NBA. So I had to reinvent myself when I got to the NBA. And, Minnesota in those days was a pretty mercenary environment. We were losing the majority of the games, and no fun in the early years.
There's one part when you decided, when you moved teams around, you just thought, now's the time I've got to start throwing my weight around, and you decided I'm going to start, firing up against some of those fellow big guys.
Game,
so that they don't think that they can stare you down and get one over you.
Yeah, I had. Well, it was sort of. It was basically there's a sort of a big dog pack sort of mentality in sport, men's sport anyway. And if there's any perceived sort of weakness or hesitancy or whatever it is, that it gets tested. And so I was getting tested a lot I never punched my chest very much or blood curdled screamed at the crowd.
It's not really your nature, is it?
Yeah.
No, well, nowadays everyone makes a layup and they want to flex down on somebody. I find it bizarre. But, and so the Americans didn't really read me at all. They read my sort of, quieter nature as weakness.
Oh, like a psychopath you were. You just kept it all in and just scared of them.
Cold and calculating.
Yeah. I decided to, so I was getting people going at me a bit, so I decided to just blew a couple of them and see how that went, and that went well, and it didn't really test me after that.
But it cost you a bit of money. Tell us about some of the fines you received, how much money you were getting fined.
Yeah, it cost me a lot of money. I don't even remember the numbers, mate, but in the NBA you get fined for games missed, and I think I was on about $2 million a year then, and there's 82 games, so you guys do the math. I think I got suspended for, over the course of that first year, probably 3 or 4 games, so 5% of my salary or whatever it was. So, yeah, it was expensive for sure.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
When you're around
I
that
can
much...
see there's no mathematicians that can't hear the gears turning on Shawnee Mac.
No, you can't.
Hey,
mate.
look, when you're around that much money, because,
Yes.
throughout your career, you would have seen some big pay packs.
Yeah, Michael Jordan, for example.
Does it ever become normal, or is it just...
Is it always gobsmacking?
Just that's just what it is.
Yeah, I hate to say, but it does become a bit normal. You get used to all your friends having expensive cars and making decisions about where they have their holidays, and you do run the risk of getting disconnected from the regular existence of everybody. And I think I tried really hard, and my family did a really good job of keeping me. I came home every off season. I didn't sort of hang in LA and party in Paris and that. I had young kids that came home. I went to Denmark. I actively sort of tried to keep myself grounded in Australia and with my people, as they say. And I think I did a good job. But nonetheless, it does become it's an unreal existence, and I don't think it's obviously a healthy one. That's not healthy for anyone.
Playing in 3 NBA championships, all under Phil Jackson at the time. We saw a lot of him, and we've heard a lot about him along the journey. Did you have a good relationship with him as the greatest coach we've seen?
Yeah, I loved Phil. I loved him as a coach, and once he wasn't my coach, I became very good friends with him. And as a man, he's a good bloke to have in your corner, and I'm in his corner as well. In fact, he's spent the most time down here out of none of the other guys have really been down here much. Americans don't like to travel internationally. So Phil came down for 3 weeks in between jobs, and I'm just going to jump out of my Uber, so you'll hear a door close, but I'm not going to lose my laser-sharp focus that I have on you guys.
But also be polite enough so you don't get your rating
Don't slam it too hard.
taken down, all right? So...
Thank you, sir, for the ride. Have a good day.
That'll do it. That's in the high 4.9s or something. That's fine. It's fine.
Hey, Luke, with Phil, when he was coming with philosophies and ways to motivate you, was he coming at all different angles? And did that suit you, some of the stuff we saw in The Last Dance?
Yeah, it suited me really well. That was the way to coach me, I suppose. I was much better with the carrot and then the stick, as they say, and Phil's sort of philosophies really suited me. And I think he was great at reading guys and using whatever sort of techniques or whatever approaches were appropriate for those guys, and certainly picked me right, that's for sure.
Can I just take a moment to say, what would that Uber driver have been thinking with you saying all that stuff? Hearing all these big names going, if he didn't know who you are, what the hell is this guy talking about?
I'll tell you, I do have a small... So, one of the questions I thought you might ask today was, what are you doing, Luke? You've been chilling on your farm for 8 years and now all of a sudden you're doing a talking show. And appropriately enough, one of the reasons I decided to sort of get out and do a bit more, other than The Last Dance and all that sort of stuff, is after The Last Dance, I was in a taxi and this young bloke spent the whole time, from Perth Airport to Fremantle, it's like 40 minutes and $600.
Yes.
And he spent basically the whole time telling me about The Last Dance and how great the Bulls were and Michael Jordan this and Dennis Rodman that. And I'm thinking, here we go, I'm going to have to take a selfie and the whole bit, which is fine. Like, that's part of the contract. When you play for the public, you do that, and I'm happy to do that. And we got to the end of the ride, and he still hadn't said anything to me. And I said, mate, do you know there was an Australian on that team? He said, nah.
So he had no idea who you were?
No.
And he was just randomly telling you about it?
That's right, and he's the biggest fan of the 90s Bulls and all this stuff. And anyway, so I just got out of the cab. I said, thanks very much. I paid him, got out of the cab, closed the door. And I was sitting there having a cup of tea 5 minutes later thinking to myself, thinking that I've done much too good a job of being under the radar.
Yes, haven't you?
Oh, my God.
It was time to lean into it a little bit, And
Well, Bill Cartwright gets a good mention. I mean, Horace Grant, he played power forward, but Bill, Will Perdue, they're getting runs, and that's bizarre because you're right. There's a lot of young people.
Idiot.
Imagine that. Then a guy goes, he did look familiar, and then Google it. Oh, my God.
That guy's so tall, he should have played basketball.
Oh, look, well, it's sort of, I mean, that's one of those fate things, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
It definitely crystallised definitely catalysed me into ours. So, okay, I'm going to say yes to the next time those peanuts come over for me.
What made that era so special at the Bulls compared to, you played at Timberwolves, you played at New York, you went to Phoenix, and you see clubs, and particularly the New York Knicks, right? They should be a big-time team. They've had draft upon draft to be able to build a team. They've never got it right.
They've never cracked it.
What makes an organisation so good, do you think?
Well, the Knicks clearly had their faults because they traded for me.
You're the big dog.
I ended my career as basically as the planes hit the Twin Towers. I was retiring, and I managed to get a jet out of LA private jet out of LA 2 days later, and never went back. Basically, that was the
wow.
So anyway, that's my New York story. But what made it special? Well, if I give you a list, no one's going to come to the show. This is partly what the show is about. But clearly, MJ's appetite for destruction and Phil's keen sort of eye on the horizon, steady leadership, and amazing, handsome ginger role players.
Yes.
And I think it's simple as that.
That's what every team needs.
13.
A giant ginger role player. Yep.
All right. Well, I've got a question. That I don't think will be in your show. So
I can guarantee it.
I've no doubt.
Okay, so you're 7'2", right? So, as we all know, that's pretty tall.
That's pretty tall.
And you've always been a tall man living in an average height world. So when you go over to the NBA where it is just littered with tall people, is everything over there built for taller people in the locker rooms, the chairs they have,
the toilets,
the tables, the toilets? Is it all built for tallies?
You would think so. It's a very good question, but no, it's not. So the arenas have normal size shower heads. They do have slightly taller chairs for the sideline because when you're sitting on the sideline, the floor is on top of the floor, So you sit on the chair, but then often the floor is sort of a foot higher in front of you. So they've made tall chairs. But no, one of my big, it's a costly exercise, but I love redesigning furniture and houses and whatever I can to make me fit. And sometimes it just involves an axe. And sometimes and a screw, and a sort of some crude furniture gets made. But no, it's not. And it always surprises me. For instance, when I was in college, the arena was built for basketball, and all the shower heads hit me square in the navel.
He had the cleanest genitals in the land.
right, but a bit grubby upstairs. Yes. I actually snuck in one night. I had a key to the gym. The coach let me have one as part of my deal. I had a key to the arena. Yeah. And I'd go in late at night and shoot when I was trying to become a real basketball player instead of a pretender.
Yeah.
And I snuck in there with some vice grips and some plumbing bits and extended the shower head up. It was nearly 3 feet.
You basically replumbed the bathrooms for tall people.
Broken and did renovations.
Yeah. I did a little plumbing renovation at the pit in Albuquerque. Anyway, I went back 20 years later and they sort of had me as a guest, and I went in the locker room beside the boys, and they were telling me, the new team were telling me that they would fight over who got Luke's shower because obviously they're all tall.
Wait, that is a legacy, my friend. That's
there's still one. But why aren't there 12 tall showers? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, given it's a tall person's sport.
I automatically assumed it would be built, especially when so much money gets put into it.
And even if a person's shorter, the water, if it's taller, it still hits them.
Still hits them.
Yeah. Luke, what about at home? Because obviously Anna, your partner, is significantly shorter than you. Do you have tall kitchen benches and short kitchen benches? How does that work?
Very insightful. Originally, we had all tall kitchen benches, and Anna started getting problems with her shoulders and elbows from chopping at sort of chin height.
Yes.
So now the kitchen cooking benches are at Anna height, and the dishwashing benches at my height.
There you go. Know your roles. Once again, playing your role. I like it.
Playing that straight up.
Luke, have you enjoyed being a part of the Australian team over the last decade? You know, once you retired, you've been in the coaching scene, and it looks like we've got some really great players.
Yeah, I've loved it. Being with the Boomers definitely brought me back to basketball. In fact, it brought me back in general, gave me something to feel good about in a way, and certainly a huge part of my life has been with the national team. I'm not doing it anymore at the moment, but I love our national program. I think when you were talking about college earlier on, I wanted to say that I get calls every week from college teams, and they want an Aussie in their team. They don't actually care which Aussie. They just want an Aussie.
Send them Nathan, see what happens.
Oh, my God. That'll be a surprise.
But they Aussies in America have a reputation of being hard-working, as being uncompromising, as, being good at school, being good teammates. People just want Aussies in the locker room and around the club. And I think that's such a great legacy for Australian basketball to have. Or legacy, I don't know if that's the right word. It's such a great reputation for Australian basketball to have. And that makes me proud,
Yeah, you started it.
We're punching. Well, I didn't start it, but I certainly feel like I contributed along the way. And I love it. I love that they all want to be. And Delhi, Matthew Dellavedova, probably, to be honest, has done more than me in that regard. Everyone wants a Delhi in their locker room. He was so professional. He got everything out of his body and probably a little bit more. I mean, he really sort of physically and skill-wise was a marginal NBA player, but he made himself a great NBA player.
Yeah.
And they all think it because he's Australian. They don't know that he's the maniac in the gym. But he really does work harder than anybody else.
You see players like Josh Giddey as well, that just going over there and blowing people away. Yeah.
But I mean, and they are legends these days. But and they all are. But there's something about a classic legend from when you were playing. Who are you really close with still?
Well, Phil for sure.
Yeah.
Scotty and I speak a lot. Steve Kerr, speak a fair bit. Randy Brown.
Dennis Rodman.
Well, really, I mean, it's hard to get Dennis sober to be candid.
Imagine.
I love Dennis, but he's difficult.
Well, he's a bit busy sorting out North Korea. He's got a lot on his plate.
He tried to get me to go to North Korea for that first one when he sort of had the exhibition game, and I was keen to go and sort of have a look up the skirt of it. Thought it was amusing until I started talking to my friends, and they all talked me out of it. And in hindsight, I'm really glad I didn't get involved. So that was thank you to my wife and friends for being the voice of reason.
Yeah, you've been everywhere with that.
Like North Korea, of course, that would be amazing if you could go safely. The one person you don't go with is Dennis Rodman. This could turn on a dime.
Exactly, that's right. And I remember the interview he did where he was clearly drunk, and well, at least I knew he was drunk. I don't know if everyone could tell, but he was quite drunk, and the interviewer put it on him straight away about the American political prisoners that were currently in North Korea and how did Dennis feel about that. And he started ranting. I don't know if you remember, but a lot of my mates were behind him. There was Cliff Robinson and Kenny Anderson, and to play with them. Their faces behind him, watching Dennis melt down on international television. They're all guilty by association. I'm thinking, I'm glad there's not a big ginger in the background.
Yes, exactly. That's when you don't want to be in the background.
Well, I might have just tackled him out of camera.
Yeah, that's right. I would have paid
I left him.
He's got the Kanye's about him, doesn't he?
He does,
It's like, shh, now.
Luke, we really appreciate
We could talk to you all day, Luke. It's so interesting.
I don't know. We can't give out everything because there's so many different angles that you'll be covering. www.artsculturetrust is one word, .wa.gov.au. That's where you buy your tickets to see Luc Longley talking about his career and his time in the NBA.
This Saturday too, so hurry up and get tickets.
We really appreciate your time. And by the way, we're waiting for an invitation from your wife. Many years ago, we did a book launch with her, and we're going to have tea.
She said that if we launched her book, she'd cook us dinner.
And we're still waiting.
Oh, really?
Can you remind her of that, please?
Well, I will remind her of that. She's got an impeccably bad memory, so I'll tell her that, and she'll. Yes, absolutely. Let's go. When are we doing it? I'll make a date. I'll get on to you about it.
And I'll help you wash up the dishes at the tour bench.
I'm not tall enough to do the dishes.
Thanks so much, Luke. Really appreciate your time, mate.
Thanks for having me along. I enjoyed it.
Love your work, Luke. Thanks, mate.
Bye.
Nathan, Nat and Sean is a Nova podcast. For more great comedy shows like this, head to novapodcasts.com.au.